Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for joining the DLT Labs BusinessCast today. We're going to be talking about supply chain visibility, how to achieve it, the results that we've achieved with Walmart Canada and its national network of carriers, and how and why you need to deploy this solution right now. So we're very lucky to have with us today Shannon Hamilton, who is our VP of Sales in North America, as well as Pete Gowanlock, our VP of Freight. The two of them have deep experience in technology, in retail, and in supply chain, and we look forward to hearing all the things that they've done with DLT Labs. So just for administration and housekeeping, we're going to cover the platform, then we're going to do a little bit of a deep dive into Walmart and freight invoice reconciliation. From there, we're going to look at how we build an invoice in real time. We're going to talk about some of the pain points, and at the end, we will do a Q&A. So please feel free to use the button on the left of your screen where it says Q&A, and if you hit that, you'll send us some questions that we can review and lodge in at the end of the webinar. But please don't hesitate. You can send them in at any time and we'll work them in as best we can. You're also welcome to reach out to us afterwards if for some reason we don't get to your comments. So without further ado, let's begin. Over to you, Shannon.
Awesome. Thank you, Melanie. So welcome, everyone. I'm impressed and delighted that we have a global audience today on our webinar. So we are looking forward to sharing with you some very critical information with regards to our use case. But before I did that, I wanted to do a little bit of level setting with everybody so that you had a sense of the platform that we're working off of as we created and deployed the solution that we'll talk about with Walmart Canada. So for many of you, the B word or blockchain might be a scary one. And trust me when I tell you, I'm not going to give you a technical explanation or bore you with the details of blockchain technology. Myself, my background is been quite diverse in both financial services, retail, technology. And what is very apparent to me is that the technology has tremendous business value. And I want to explain to everyone the three core benefits that the technology provides. And then as we go into discussing the specific deployment of the solution with Walmart Canada, it will definitely bring the great attributes of the technology to life. So when I think about blockchain from a technology standpoint, and again, link it back to business outcomes, there are three key areas of the technology that provide tremendous business benefit. And they really boil down to an immutable and tamper-proof history. So the inherent benefits of blockchain allow us to be able to provide real-time compliance and auditability of information. It creates an environment where multiple parties are working off of the same set of information. So imagine yourself in an organization where you have data, another company that you want to work with or that you are working with has data, and how does the situation manifest itself when both parties have their own sources of information when truly companies are meant to work together and systems are not. So when you provide that trusted environment, that single source of truth, it can really eliminate a lot of process rework, duplication of effort, and reconciliation issues, which I'm sure you'll find very interesting as we get into explaining the specific deployment of our solution with Walmart Canada. The ability to use the information in a way to predict and automate. So specifically, smart contracts can play a role here to be able to use information to automate decisions. And when systems make decisions based on data, they tend to be accurate, unlike people ourselves who can make mistakes and make judgment calls. So really these three inherent benefits, when they're provided at the same time simultaneously, provide tremendous benefit to business processes and can significantly reduce costs as a result. Just a quick note on our platform. There are a number of different modules that are available from a configuration standpoint. Typically, when we talk to customers, they are looking to solve issues in these areas. Today, we'll be focusing primarily on tracking and tracing and workflow and supply chain. But these are typically really great use cases for the technology and can be deployed very quickly. They also are industry agnostic, so they cut across all industries, whether you're in retail, distribution, manufacturing, oil and gas, natural resources. All of these industries have similar issues as you look at the processes and business outcomes that companies are looking to solve. So exciting that the technology is so agnostic and horizontal in its application. So I think why everyone's here today, at least what I believe why they're here, is to understand more about our technology and the project that we deployed with Walmart Canada and their network of national carriers. So we're going to spend some time now diving deeper into freight invoice reconciliation and the specific issues and outcomes that we achieved with Walmart Canada. So most of us, especially during COVID, have probably ventured into a Walmart, and we know a lot about them as a retailer. To give you some perspective of them from a business standpoint, and we're speaking specifically about Walmart Canada. I know we've got a global audience on the line. There's a few data points here that I really want to draw your attention to. So in the environment where Walmart as a shipper are looking to work with a network of their third-party carriers, so about 70 carriers, they process 500,000 loads annually through these carriers. What's interesting and complicated about that is that every shipment, every invoice that is attached to those 500,000 loads contains about 200 distinct data elements. And if you extrapolate the number of data elements across the loads and the number of carriers, you're presented with an environment where you could have up to 7 billion permutations of information flowing through their system and needing to be shared with those third-party carriers. So this presented quite a complex challenge and was the situation that existed when we started our conversations with Walmart Canada. So as a project and as an initiative, this was really a business improvement opportunity spearheaded by SVP John Bayless at Walmart Canada. And I think a couple of things that really came out of the conversation and project with him were really the desire to have transparency and real-time information that could be shared with their network of carriers. Because as I stated earlier, companies are meant to work together, systems are not. And I think as John eloquently said, the issues that they had around reconciliation and the delays that they were experiencing with respect to paying their carriers were not system issues. They were system issues rather, not people problems. So recognizing that was a big opportunity, the opportunity to leverage blockchain as a solution and to leverage our platform was a key opportunity to improve the relationships, but also reduce cost savings for Walmart Canada. If I step back from Walmart specifically, and I know many of you are in this area, your roles and your businesses touch freight transportation in many different ways. The issues are not common just to Walmart. These are industry issues, and again, whether you're sitting in retail, distribution, manufacturing, government, almost everybody that has something that they need to ship experiences similar challenges. In freight transportation, what we find is that there are a few fixed charges. There are a few known charges that exist when an agreement is made between a shipper and the transportation company that will transport those goods. And there's a high degree of variable information that goes into the creation of the invoice. And that's because there's events, there's real life, there's environmental, weather-related issues, all sorts of circumstances that create variations of data and information that change the invoice from what you thought it was going to be to what it actually is once the goods are delivered. And so when we've been speaking to industry, what we've heard and what we've seen, which is similar to the challenges and issues that Walmart was experiencing, is that this nature of a high number of data points and a significant number of variable charges results in long times for carriers to be paid. So on average, up to 6 to 8 weeks for invoices to be disputed and finally paid. This is beyond their payment terms. So if you can imagine a situation where you're expecting to get paid in 30 or 45 days, then having to go back and forth becomes very painful and challenging, especially in an industry that already has thin margins to begin with. The lack of visibility and the high degree of variable charges create situations where many transactions are overpaid. There were definitely instances of this and a high percentage of overpayment that existed in our use case with Walmart Canada. And a good example of this and how I've seen it manifest itself with other customers is where literally a threshold, a dollar amount is set per invoice to suggest if the invoice is different by, let's say, $100, it's easier to go ahead and pay that invoice than it is to actually determine why that invoice is different. So in those situations, you're actually knowingly paying a higher amount because it is easier and less labor intensive to do so. A staggering statistic in North America is that 70% of transportation invoices are in dispute on a daily basis, holding up about $140 billion in payables. That's a staggering amount. And given, again, the nature of the volume of data and the variation of information that can happen over the course of a shipment, this has definitely resonated true with the folks that we're speaking with. It's also an industry that has a high degree of administrative costs and paper-based processes. Upwards of 20% of transportation costs have been reported to be linked to manual back office work. So having the ability to get control of that is an immediate impact to bottom line. And in many cases, shippers and carriers are working either with 3PLs, 4PLs, or business process outsourcers in order to gain control of this process in an effort to reduce cost. So notwithstanding, it's a very challenging landscape, which is really well positioned to be able to leverage a technology and a platform such as ours and blockchain. So I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Pete, who's got tremendous background and experience in freight and freight payment. Pete, could you explain the situation that Walmart had before we started our engagement with them?
Wonderful. Thanks, Shannon, and welcome everyone. All right, so we're looking at, this is Walmart Canada's past process for payment of their freight invoices. It's fairly similar to other organizations in the industry. They were using a matching model whereby carriers will send in their invoices and they attempt to match them up to Walmart's corresponding bill of lading. And as is often the case, there were discrepancies between the information provided by the two separate systems. As you can see as well, this was a lengthy 11-step process. And we'll see in the next slide the changes that have been made to the process to reduce that number of steps. And we'll go through the entire process explaining what happens. So here's the new DL Freight payment process for Walmart Canada. In this new workflow, we can see the steps have been reduced dramatically. And it's because of the information that is available at each step here. Before the shipment is even tendered, we have agreed upon rates between the carrier and Walmart. We also know and have visibility to the fuel rates for the fuel indexes that are being used, and that is known well before any shipment is even tendered. When the tender occurs, and that is Walmart sending out a request for a shipment to be made by a carrier, all of the shipment details are known at this time. So which carrier they are tendering this to, the origin destination of the shipment, the number of miles that will be traveled, all of this information is known at the time that the tender is created. So a lot can be provided at this time to start generating the invoice. And we're building this invoice together, Walmart and their carriers, as they go through these process steps. In step 2, as the move occurs, we're using IoT data, GPS tracking information specifically to provide information about the unknown charges that may occur during the movement of a shipment. So a carrier arrives at a distribution center and there's no loading dock available for them, so they have wait time incurred. That is not known at the time that you would tender that shipment, but it is one of the charges that the carrier is available to charge for on their invoice. Once in the system, the data integrity is ensured by the blockchain, and it's auditable, immutable, and transparent. We're using smart contracts to automate decisions, increasing the efficiency and ensuring that the agreement established between the parties is being followed all day, every day, for every transaction. Because all of the information is visible at the same time for both parties, it allows Walmart and their carriers to be on the same page. So all of this information throughout the steps is visible, whether it's the original contract rates and agreement between the two parties, visible on the platform, to the detailed tender information, visible on the platform. IoT data coming in and indicating that Walmart should be expecting a 2-hour wait charge for this shipment, and then the corresponding 2-hour charge from the carrier, all visible to both parties. They're completely on the same page with what the information is that is available. So you can see at the very bottom of this slide too, the steps that have been reduced in that original process. And it's a very streamlined process now. And we'll move on to who is providing the data in this transaction. So key here is that it is seamless integration to the DLT platform through with the shipper's shipping system, that being Walmart's shipping system, the carrier's transportation management system, or TMS, and then IoT data for the GPS devices, tracking the information, and then as well another data set that we're accessing are the fuel indexes to be used for fuel charges. And as I indicated earlier, the shipment detail is known at the time of the tender acceptance process, and all of the details of that data remains throughout the process steps for visibility on both sides.
So Pete, this is Melanie jumping in for just a quick second. When is this information available to the party who didn't contribute the information? You said the supplier gives some, or the shipper gives some, and the carrier gives some, and the IoT devices give some. When is that information available?
As soon as it's in the platform, it's available to both parties.
In real time. That's awesome.
Very good. Thanks. Thanks, Melanie. All right. Next slide, we're going to take a quick look at how an invoice is built here. So as we'll go through the process steps, you'll see this is a depiction of the invoice being populated with the different sets of data that are coming from whether it be the shipper or the carrier or IoT data. So just to simulate what is happening with the data being collected at each step in our process. So step one, here is the tender has been accepted, and immediately we can start building and generating this invoice. We know the bill to parties is Walmart. We know the carrier that is providing the service. We know the type of shipment. Is it a full truckload or less than truckload? We know the origin destination pairs, plus the number of stops that will be incurred either at pickup or delivery. What's the total distance of this shipment? Are there any off-route miles incurred for this shipment? The equipment type, whether it will be a full 53-foot truck, less than truckload, a heated vehicle, a refrigerated or reefer vehicle. And of course, the rates for this line haul move are already established, and we are selecting them from what we call master tables. In step two, as the shipment begins to occur, the service provider now is moving across the roads delivering this shipment. So at this point, the IoT data and GPS tracking is being used, and carriers will be submitting additional billing charges from their TMS. So if we continue through our process steps here, in step 3, we can see that the IoT data has been received, and the carrier has now, they're automatically billing. We can see there was a wait time charge for this shipment because perhaps they waited at either the vendor to pick up or the distribution center on delivery. There was a wait time charge there. And we can see there were no shunts or detention. Certainly the vehicle was used in this scenario, and there's no redelivery charge. In step 3, the carrier additionally can add additional accessorial charges, and those could be things that IoT data is not tracking, for instance, the use of a tarp, or simply miscellaneous charges for anything that is really outside of the scope of normal charges that they may incur or that Walmart may be expecting. And if we move to step 4 here, they're validating these charges. And when they're doing a final validation, just before they're about to send the invoice on for payment. And we should see that taxes have been applied here. And once they've done a final review of all of this invoice, they agree that yes, this invoice is ready for presentment and payment to be received from Walmart. And we can see that they have sent this invoice on, and it is immediately paid in a paid or payment process status. Key here is that the approvals have already been done throughout the process. The established rate is there, it's pre-approved. We know what the rate should be for this carry. We know the fuel charges. All of the IoT data is approved and validated through the use of that IoT data. Walmart has visibility to it to validate it. The carrier has visibility to it and are in turn billing for those services. So by the time the invoice reaches step 4, all of these charges are automatically approved and approved by Walmart. So when the carrier is requesting payment for this, it goes through no other validation audits. All right, if we move to next slide.
So Pete, this is an exciting time. Shannon told us we were going to talk about the B word today, and here we are talking about getting rid of a whole lot of paperwork, and you've brought in the discussion about IoT. So I was wondering about what is the role for automation in our freight solution?
Sure thing. Thanks, Melanie. Okay. IoT data is absolutely critical to the process here. It's used in a variety of ways. So it is enabling the automation of a proof of delivery, or POD. So because we have the IoT data, it is tracking and indicating, yes, the carrier has arrived at the delivery point, and proof of delivery has now been the requirement for proof of delivery. Walmart has removed that requirement, and it's validated by the GP.
Previously, how many pieces of paper did they need for proof of delivery?
There were numerous pieces of paper involved in the POD. Melanie, I don't know the exact number, my apologies, but it was extensive paperwork. Okay. In addition, IoT data, GPS data is validating any wait times that were occurred, either pickup or delivery destinations. And the key here is that the information is available and visible for all parties. It provides the truth and improves the speed of validation, making the number of disputes, even the few number of disputes that are arising, quicker to resolve, because both Walmart and their carriers can have visibility to that data, and they're validating very quickly that yes, our GPS tracking indicates that there was a 2-hour wait time at location X.
And someone has asked a question. Someone has asked a question when you just said, and I won't wait to the end for this one, because you just said the data is validated. So they're confused about what you mean when you say the data is validated. They're asking who's validating the data.
The meaning by that is the data itself that is visible on the platform is validated automatically by the fact that we have this GPS tracking data. So it's no one entering in the information. It's no longer a phone call down to the receiving docs. Was this delivery received? It's all provided there and validated by the information coming to us through the GPS tracking.
So you're saying both parties accept that as the single source of truth?
It is, absolutely.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Great. All right. Additional uses for the GPS tracking or IoT data, clearly real-time tracking of arrival times. Walmart will certainly want to know, is this shipment going to arrive on time? You see a little temperature gauge there, verifying temperature controls. If it's a heated or a reefer vehicle, ensuring and preserving the integrity of the products that require those temperature controls. And then tracing of history of shipments, typically used if any recalls were required. And of course, all of this information, IoT or other, is being used in business intelligence analysis for future planning with their carriers. All right, so next we'll take a quick look at the platform, the portal itself. So what you're seeing here is a view of our portal that is used by both Walmart Canada and their carriers. I'll just spend a little bit of time to give you some visibility into the details provided and what the portal looks like. So we can see here that this is a list of shipments, and in turn, these are the invoices for those shipments. If you notice, the top bar there is a list of columns. This is a total column tabular view. Those columns, important to note, are fully customizable by each user and user. And as I mentioned earlier, as Shannon mentioned earlier, there are 200 plus data elements possible in all of the equations. If you prefer to make your business process easier, looking at, let's say, the number of pallets that are on this shipment, or the origin destination cities as opposed to their location codes, you simply reconfigure this view for whatever works best for your business purposes. Okay, and we'll take a look at a quick transaction here, and notice we're clearly displaying these steps throughout the process. So both Walmart and the carrier understands where is my invoice along its payment process and the steps that we're following. That one in particular had already been sent to Walmart Freight Payables and was in a payment status. And this next one that is highlighted, it is in a dispute status. So a Walmart, when that occurs, then it could be a reason for the carrier is invoicing maybe more wait time hours than the IoT data has validated and Walmart is expecting. Then the invoice potentially can go into a dispute status, in which case a Walmart auditor is notified and they help resolve that dispute. Carrying on, we'll look at the detail view of one of the load IDs itself. And again, header information here shows where this invoice is in the steps in the process. And we can see that it is in transfer at the moment, and we're collecting and gathering IoT GPS tracking data. And then we have full visibility to all of the details about this shipment. You can see the top portion number of data elements here are simply the load ID and the pickup and delivery timing anticipated for this load. It's coming from a vendor in Calgary. And then if we were to scroll down on this page, many other data elements available to see the full invoice here for visibility. All right, and we'll move on to, here is a visibility for a typical carrier. It is showing the dashboard for a carrier. So this information, I have updated information for the carrier, so the numbers that you see on the screen are slightly different now. So I'm going to share that this carrier has just shy of 6,000 invoices processing in the platform. Total approved invoices are a little over 5,300, so 89% of their invoices have been approved and are in either a payment processed or payment settled status. Current number of disputes that this carrier has, you see the number 4 up there with a very little sliver of the pie. Today, it's actually 5. So 5 shipments are in dispute or invoices are in dispute of their 6,000. That is less than 0.1%. And if you consider that a better metric is, well, what are the number of disputes to current in-process transactions, not those that are already paid, payment processed or payment settled. That number is 5 of 643. Which is still a little less than 1% is in dispute for this carrier. So an outstanding metric that the carriers are gaining efficiency on. Now we're interested in understanding, you may be interested in understanding, are the carriers getting paid on time? So I will tell you this carrier has an average from the time of delivery of their shipment to their invoice being approved is 5.3 days through those 5 steps in the process. So 5.3 days is a remarkable figure.
Wait a minute, say it again. That's truly remarkable.
Yes, a remarkable metric and statistic,
And you
Melanie.
think that includes the travel time and the shipment time, and from the time of the tender until the payment is processed?
It's from the time of delivery to invoice being approved. All information has been provided through the IoT data, and we have that at time of delivery. So from time of delivery to invoice being approved, because all of that information has smart contract calculations, known rates ahead of time, and then IoT data tracking the GPS and validating that, yes, these are valid charges, whether they're known at the time of tender or discovered through the move, the occurrence of the move. Those approvals are validated and very quickly can be resolved and approved.
That's awesome. Thank you.
All right. If you're curious about this carrier being an exception, I will say across the carrier base, we're seeing similar metrics. The overall dispute average on the platform for all of Walmart Canada's carriers is right now sitting at 2.1% of their shipments are in a dispute status at any time. So again, a fabulous metric. Efficiency for those carriers.
High double digits to under 3%?
Correct. You saw in one of the slides earlier from Shannon that it was high double digits, sometimes in the excess of 70% are going into dispute in a typical process, and we're seeing between 2 and 3% at the moment with Walmart carriers.
And what happened to reconciliation?
It's being done and automated throughout the process. There really is, it's automated through the smart contract rules and business rules that are integrated into the platform. And if you're meaning that there's no longer a matching process because both Walmart and the carrier are building this invoice throughout the steps together.
So thank you for all that. And the next slide is which pain points no longer exist as a result of this solution. And so you've now told us what the times and disputes were, what the disputes were before, but how long would it take if they were not using our platform to deliver invoice reconciliation?
Right. So one of the reasons why Walmart Canada was looking for a new solution was that the previous process was, in terms of if there were disputes, those were taking months to resolve. And clearly, not all of their invoices were going into a dispute process, but certainly when there were disputes on invoices, they were in the 60, 90, multiple months range for getting resolved. And so that reduction itself is enabled by the full visibility to the data here.
Cool. And what other pain points? I mean, I like this graphic because it shows the giant piles of paperwork, and then on the one side and then on the other side, everybody looking at one piece of information. I'm assuming you've got stuff to say about that.
Sure thing. Yeah, so I mentioned earlier about the no requirement for a proof of delivery. So the elimination of the proof of delivery is without a doubt an efficiency gain and greatly appreciated by the carriers in particular. It was not intended as a goal initially when starting the project, but what we've realized too is that it is providing a more contactless process. So in today's world, I think we're all well aware of with the pandemic that has reached across the globe, having a more contactless process is certainly of importance and reducing risk to all of those parties involved. Having the rates, the rate approval process, I did not describe it previously. I mentioned earlier that rates are agreed to and approved ahead of time through a typical annual, whether it's an annual or a multi-year bid process done between Walmart and their carriers. Inevitably, though, you will have shipments that are assigned to a carrier that does not normally do that move for the shipper across a specific lane, and that carrier may not have a pre-approved rate for that. So the new process that Walmart and the platform allows for is the rate approval process on either new lanes or spot rates, and that is simply providing the information. The carrier can provide the information within the platform, and each night both Walmart and that carrier receive an automated report that says, here is a new rate that we would like approval from Walmart, please. And it is approved by Walmart. The platform receives that approval automatically, loads the new rate, and the carrier can then continue with that invoice. I think without a doubt, though, the biggest pain point resolved is accomplished by the unprecedented transparency here. The full visibility has eliminated the guesswork on either side of this partnership. So there's no more guessing about which line haul rate was used. Well, my system has this and your system must be different. Is it a spot rate or a regular lane rate? What fuel rate was being used? How many miles were included for this fuel charge? And what was the equipment type? So many different variables, as mentioned earlier, go into the build of a transportation invoice, and it's a complex business. But with the visibility here mentioned earlier, it allows for, even for the small number of disputes, it allows for much quicker resolution.
That's great. Thank you so much. So Are there any actions being taken? So we now have end-to-end supply chain visibility or transparency. Are there any actions being taken to do things like environmental improvements now that they know the fuel rates, or are there any other consequences or impacts coming out of this visibility and transparency that they now have?
Right, there is full tracking. There are carbon tax charges being calculated within the platform, and visibility to those. Walmart is tracking those as well. The carriers have visibility to that as well.
Awesome. Thank you. So I think now it's time to move to the next slide and invite everybody who wants to lodge your questions in the Q&A on the left of your screen. Actually, might be that way. But please feel free to type, and I'll get started with a few. We're going to invite Shannon to come back in because I'm not sure which of the two of you will answer the question. The first one was, which blockchain technology is the foundation of our platform? I'm not sure which of the two of you want to take a stab at the techie question.
I'll take a very high level stab at it, Melanie. So our platform has a number of technologies that it uses in order to deliver the capabilities that we've just gone through. But the blockchain technology that we're using for this deployment is Hyperledger. Our platform is actually blockchain agnostic, so we can operate with Ethereum, Corda, Hyperledger. It really depends on the use case. We definitely have our opinions and want to provide our expertise and guidance when it comes to consulting with a customer on which to use, but in this case, it was Hyperledger.
Yeah, I think our team has some pretty big might in blockchain delivery globally with some of the leading, and for the last decade or so. Maybe you wanted to speak a bit about that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we've been involved with the technology for over 7 years. We represent the technology in a number of different consortiums and groups, Mobi, BIDA. We sit on the IBM board as well. So we're continuing to advance the technology. We actually train about 3,000 blockchain technology professionals annually and hire the top 1% into the business. So we're very passionate not only about advancing the technology, but making sure that we can contribute thought leadership to it as well.
Super. Okay. Again, to either of the two of you, there are a few questions about IoT. Oh, sorry. Next one. What happens in network outage if data is delayed? Does either one of you want to answer that one?
Pete?
Yeah, I can take a stab at that. So if data is delayed, it's simply queued up and processed as soon as it comes in. It's all cloud services based. So we have not been experiencing data outages, and the platform itself has never had an outage to date. So it's data is simply queued up, and as soon as we receive it, we'll be processing it.
Fantastic. Yeah, and it's my understanding the company built out multiple layers of geographic separate continuity that are geographically separate so that we would be able to prevent any kind of downtime and that contributes to the 100% uptime. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
There's a bunch of
process. Sure.
Okay. There's a bunch of questions about the IoT devices and who owns them, Walmart or the carrier, and what kind of solution is being used. I don't know if either of you would answer that question.
Yep, sure. So those are being employed by the carriers. They're on the carrier trailers, and it was a requirement from Walmart that the carriers did have this capability. So yes, in terms of owning it, you will say that the carriers are owning that capability. They've formed agreements and have purchased that capabilities from a provider.
And then how do you differentiate between TMS systems and fleet management GPS systems? Somebody's asked that question.
Repeat that, please, Melanie.
How do you differentiate between TMS systems and fleet management GPS systems? In here it says often, the person says often the two are separate.
Yeah, so we're certainly receiving information from the carrier's TMSs. Not a lot required from their fleet management systems, but it's really whatever system is typically doing their billing from the carrier side that they're interested in integrating with us for the information that they have in their TMSs. So not a lot required from the fleet management process. That's really the business of either of the carrier in managing their fleet of which vehicle is doing the move.
And if I can maybe chime on, add into that, I think that is because that in this case that is Walmart's specific business requirements. Inherently, the platform, if there was a business need to collect fleet management information, then we seamlessly integrate with legacy systems primarily through API, and we would look to pull in that information based on whatever specific business process we were looking to automate for the organization.
That's great, thank you. Somebody's asking how long would it take for my company to start using your platform?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'll give you a little anecdotal story just about the Walmart implementation. So when we started the conversation with Walmart, first and foremost, we were actually talking to them about a track and trace application that we had built to track cobalt out of mines in Africa. And we took that use case and we brought it to Walmart and said, we can solve this issue that you have, and we can do it in less than 90 days. So you can imagine their shock and surprise, not only in the juxtaposition of the use cases, but also the speed with which we could do it. And so we went from business requirements to the production pilot with Walmart Canada's largest carrier, Bison Transport, in a little over 60 days. Today, based on the solution and the improvements in efficiency that we've realized through the deployment, we could deploy this solution to another organization in about 3 weeks. And if we were to, if you went back to the platform slide where I explained some of the specific business process outcomes that organizations might be looking to achieve, we could configure our platform in under 90 days for any specific use case. The nature of our platform, the way that it operates, is think of us as having built a UI UX on top of blockchain technology. So the blockchain technology itself is actually way under the hood for users and can be configured by the equivalent of a BA type resource to really configure and deploy a workflow within an organization. So the time has been spent in making sure we're not doing custom development in each instance or use case. And because of that, we can deploy very quickly and with limited input around business rules, and then focus on data integration.
That's great. Thank you, Shannon. One of the questions from somebody is, do you have any interaction approving the content of the shipment and its integrity as opposed to the arrival of the truck?
Pete?
Yeah, we're not currently proving the contents that are within that shipment. We're simply doing, the platform is doing the freight invoice on it.
But you do have visibility into every time it stops, where it stops, when it stops, for how long it stops, like from the time it leaves where it arrived to wherever it goes, and it's under the care of the person. You have transparency into what they're doing. So presumably there's something, if people wanted to add on, there's opportunities to do so.
Right. Certainly we know the vendor. If it's coming from a vendor into a DC or vendor directly to a store, visibility to that. It's not much of a stretch from there to realize that the actual tracking of the commodities that are on that truck could be tracked as well.
Awesome. So I'm also getting a number of excited attendees asking me if Walmart Canada is the only Walmart that's using this at the moment, or are there any plans for any other Walmart nations to be bringing this out? So either Peter or probably Shannon maybe wants to speak about that.
I have a big smile on my face. So that's the great opportunity you have with an awesome customer like Walmart. So absolutely, we are having conversations. I can't go into more details, but there's been a lot of profile and discussion about the project. So it's not been a secret we've kept in Canada. We've been telling it to many countries around the world and other organizations. I will pause for a minute and say, many people look at this solution and that it's, only organizations like Walmart that can afford it or benefit from it. We operate on a SaaS platform which scales based on the size of the organization and the volume of shipments. So, we've had conversations. Walmart's got 500,000 loads. I've had conversations with customers that have as little as 5,000 loads a year. So the beauty of it is that it can scale, but we're excited to continue to expand within Walmart and with other organizations that have the need, especially in this current environment. Often you can't control your top line in terms of revenue, and there's been tremendous impact globally with COVID. But the ability to look internally and drive those process improvements and improve relationships with your trusted partners, such as shippers and carriers, has been a real pleasure to be able to go out into the world and tell the story and help organizations realize the benefits.
And someone's asked here, Shannon, how do you work with brokers as opposed to directly with carriers?
Yeah, great question. So, I'm going to go out and throw out a name, organizations like C.H. Robinson, who are large organizations that operate as carriers, but also, 4PLs. If that's sort of the example, we work directly with them as well. We also have a partnership model where the platform in its highly configurable nature can be configured for a specific use case and sold directly through brokers or other organizations to their end customers. So if anybody's interested in sort of how the configuration of the platform works or the different opportunities to leverage it, by all means, feel free to reach out and we can go into more detail on that.
Yeah, that's great. And then another person has asked a question about who owns the platform and runs it. Is it DLT Labs or is it Walmart?
It's Walmart.
Super. So one last chance for whoever's listening. If you have any other questions, please lodge them in the Q&A on the left and I will put them out to the group. And we'll give it a minute just to see if anybody does that. But failing that, Shannon, stop sharing. Do you want to put up the last slide, Shannon, that has your email addresses on it so that we could just invite anybody to be in touch with you or Pete if they have any further questions?
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so Shannon.Hamilton@dltlabs.com. Pete.Gowanlock@dltlabs.com. You can follow us on Twitter. We'd love to hear from you on Twitter or LinkedIn. We post a variety of content on LinkedIn related to various business scenarios, different applications, as well as some of the more technical things are on our LinkedIn as well. From our LinkedIn, you can find our Medium blog where we post lots of technical explanations. As we said before, we've got the world's biggest blockchain team, and we chose the best of the ones we train. So we're pretty proud, and they give meaningful contributions in a variety of platforms. So please come and check us out. There's lots of information on our website too. And alternatively, there's an email right there, and we look forward to continuing the conversation. Unless Shannon or Pete has anything to add, then I think we're ready to say thank you so much. And please be in touch if you have questions or topics for future webinars, because we intend to do this again.